Beyond the orbit of Neptune, sunlight fades to a pale whisper. Out here, the warmth of our star is little more than a memory, and the shadows stretch forever. This is the Kuiper Belt, a vast ring of ancient ice and stone, circling the sun like forgotten embers from creation itself. And somewhere, sailing through that darkness, is a small traveler, no larger than a piano, carrying with it the final portraits we may ever see of worlds at the edge of everything we know. This is the story of New Horizons, and of the two worlds it revealed, Pluto and Arrokoth, a story of distance, of wonder, and of the haunting beauty of final glimpses. Scene 1. A world once forgotten. There was a time when Pluto was just a word whispered in textbooks, the ninth planet, the mysterious one. For generations, it was the faintest dot at the edge of our solar system, too distant to show us its face. But in truth, Pluto was never just a dot. It was a story waiting to be told, one that humanity had nearly decided wasn't worth hearing. In the late 19th century, when the age of planetary exploration was in full bloom, Pluto sat ignored in the cold. The grand missions went to Mars, to Jupiter, to Saturn. Pluto was too small, too far, too unimportant. But a handful of scientists disagreed. They looked at that dim world beyond Neptune and saw not a distant rock, but the last great mystery of our cosmic neighborhood. They fought for years, through canceled projects, dwindling budgets, and skepticism from every direction, until at last they were heard. And in 2006, their dream took flight. Scene 2. The Fastest Traveler. January 19th, 2006. From Cape Canaveral, Florida, the New Horizons spacecraft soared into the sky aboard an Atlas V rocket, a streak of light bound for the deep. It was the fastest spacecraft ever launched, a machine of pure intent to reach Pluto before an entire generation forgot to care. It passed the moon in just 9 hours, 10 times faster than Apollo, and when it reached Jupiter a year later, it borrowed a fraction of the giant's gravity, slingshotting onward, faster still. As it raced past Jupiter, the spacecraft turned its gaze toward the planet's moons, capturing storms, auroras, and volcanic plumes in astonishing clarity. It was a test run, a dress rehearsal before the main event. Then, as it drifted into the silent outer dark, it slept. For nearly a decade, New Horizons slumbered in hibernation, alone, conserving strength, waiting for its moment to wake up. Scene 3. The Awakening. When its systems came alive again in 2015, humanity was watching. Every day, tiny packets of data trickled back across billions of kilometers, faint signals from the edge of the sun's light. At first, the images were blurry, pixelated, distant. But as New Horizons drew closer, the world began to sharpen, and Pluto's secrets came into focus. There it was, a pale orange sphere, streaked with shadows and brightness, and right across its surface, a heart. The world had been cold and unseen for 4 billion years, and the first time we saw it clearly, it smiled. The heart of Pluto, Sputnik Planitia, became a symbol of everything the mission stood for: curiosity, perseverance, and the strange tenderness of discovery. Scene 4. The Flyby. July 14th, 2015. After 9.5 years of travel, New Horizons made its closest approach, just 12,500 kilometers above Pluto's frozen plains. It was moving so fast that it would only have a few hours to capture everything. And in those hours, it took thousands of images: mountains, glaciers, plains, haze, moons, an entire world preserved in data and light. Back on Earth, the team waited. For hours, the spacecraft remained silent. It couldn't send anything yet. It was too busy taking the photos that would make history. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a faint signal arrived. A trickle of light from 4.8 billion kilometers away, carrying the story of a world we'd never truly known. Scene 5. The face of Pluto. When the first high-resolution images came through, they were unlike anything we expected. Vast plains of nitrogen ice flowing like glaciers, mountains made of frozen water reaching 4 kilometers high, a thin blue atmosphere glowing in backlight, layered with mist and haze. Pluto was alive, not geologically dead as many believed, but sculpted by forces still active: ice flowing, gases freezing and thawing, winds whispering across its surface. It wasn't just a frozen rock. It was a world, dynamic, complex, heartbreakingly beautiful. Soft transition, distant hum of spacecraft instruments. Narrator. In that frozen landscape, New Horizons found mountains that rivaled the Rockies, yet made of water ice as hard as stone. It found plains smooth and young, their surfaces too fresh to bear many craters, meaning Pluto is not static, but still changing. And within that vast heart-shaped basin, scientists saw the fingerprints of convection, great slow currents of nitrogen ice that rise and fall like a planetary heartbeat. Sputnik Planitia wasn't just a patch of ice. It was alive in its own glacial rhythm, moving, renewing, whispering through eons. Think about that. 5 billion kilometers away, on a world smaller than our moon, the surface still flows. It breathes in frozen nitrogen, exhales thin air, and shimmers under a dim, distant sun. We may never walk there, but for a brief moment, through the eyes of a machine, we saw it breathe. This was more than a scientific triumph. It was a reminder that even in the coldest corners of the cosmos, beauty persists, quietly, patiently, waiting for us to notice.
Last time, we watched as New Horizons revealed the face of Pluto, a small world with mountains of ice and a heart of nitrogen, alive beneath the cold silence. Now we travel deeper, into the mysteries beneath that heart, and the strange dance Pluto shares with its moons. Scene 1. The Eternal Waltz. Pluto doesn't spin alone. It moves through space locked in an ancient, slow-motion dance with its largest moon, Charon. They face each other endlessly, each bound to the other by gravity's invisible embrace. Their shared center of mass lies not within Pluto, but between them, out in open space. That means they orbit each other like partners in a cosmic waltz, never breaking eye contact. If you stood on Pluto, Charon would never rise or set. It would hang forever in the same spot in the sky, silent and immense. And if you stood on Charon, Pluto would do the same, suspended above your horizon, unmoving, unblinking. They are two worlds tidally locked in eternity, their fates intertwined since the dawn of the solar system. Scene 2. The Dark Twin. While Pluto gleams in amber tones, Charon is stark and pale, its surface carved by fractures and ancient scars. And yet there's one mysterious splash of color, a deep red cap over its north pole. That red stain, scientists believe, is a gift from Pluto itself. When Pluto's cryovolcanoes erupt, spewing slurries of water, ammonia, and hydrocarbons, some of that material escapes its gravity. It drifts across the gulf between them and falls gently onto Charon's pole, where sunlight transforms it into tholins, complex organic compounds that redden with age. Two worlds painting one another through shared breath. Even across 19,000 kilometers, they exchange whispers of chemistry, a quiet conversation in crimson. Scene 3. The living ice. Pluto's surface, as New Horizons showed us, is a paradox of age and youth. In some places, craters lie untouched for billions of years. In others, ice plains stretch smooth and unblemished, as if born yesterday. The heart-shaped Sputnik Planitia dominates the landscape, an ocean of nitrogen ice roughly the size of Texas. Across its surface are strange polygonal patterns, like the cracked mud of a desert seen from orbit. But these aren't cracks of dryness. They're the tops of convection cells, each hundreds of kilometers wide, rising and falling over millions of years. Here, nitrogen ice behaves like water does on Earth, flowing, freezing, sublimating. Every motion is glacially slow, but in cosmic time, it dances. The plains are bordered by mountains made of water ice so rigid that they stand like frozen fortresses, some reaching 4 kilometers tall. One of these, Right Mons, may be a cryovolcano, a volcano that erupts not molten rock, but chilled slurries of water and ammonia. Even here, so far from warmth, there is motion, change, a whisper of life's essential ingredient, water, frozen yet unforgotten. Scene 4. The snakeskin terrain. Further east, New Horizons revealed a landscape unlike anything we'd ever seen. A vast stretch of terrain called Tartarus Dorsa, rippling with ridges and spires. It looks like the skin of some ancient creature, textured, wrinkled, alive. Scientists call these formations pennintites, blade-like structures carved by sublimation, where sunlight turns ice directly into gas. On Earth, they form only in the driest, highest places, like Chile's Atacama Desert. But on Pluto, they rise hundreds of meters high, stretching for kilometers, an alien forest of frozen spears. To imagine walking through them would be impossible. The air is thinner than any vacuum chamber, the temperature cold enough to freeze nitrogen itself. And yet they exist, shaped only by light, time, and silence. Scene 5. The Whale and the Heart. Elsewhere, dark streaks stain Pluto's pale crust, most notably the region known as Cthulhu Macula, a shadowy expanse resembling a giant whale swimming across the face of the planet. It's an ancient surface, cratered and worn, likely billions of years old. Here, methane frost clings to mountain peaks, and the darkness, that deep red-black dust, is made of tholins, the same complex hydrocarbons that paint Charon's pole. They form when ultraviolet sunlight break apart methane and nitrogen in Pluto's thin air, letting them recombine into darker, heavier molecules that drift down like snow. Over eons, these tholins give the planet its ruddy hue, a sign that even in the absence of life, chemistry never stops creating. Scene 6. The fragile atmosphere. As New Horizons turned its camera back toward Pluto, sunlight streamed through the planet's thin atmosphere, revealing something extraordinary. A soft blue haze wrapped around the dwarf planet like a silk veil. Layer upon layer, more than 20 distinct strata of mist, each one catching the sunlight, scattering it into color. Pluto's atmosphere is tenuous, made mostly of nitrogen with traces of methane and carbon monoxide. Its pressure is less than 1/1,000,000th of that of Earth's, yet it stretches hundreds of kilometers high. In these rarefied layers, sunlight breaks apart molecules, creating tiny particles that drift downward and eventually freeze onto the surface as tholins. A slow, endless cycle, the sky feeding the ground feeding the sky. For a brief time, Pluto's air even glows with twilight, its hazes turning the edge of the world into a luminous halo. To see it was to witness something deeply moving, a planet at the edge of the sun wearing a blue crown. Scene 8. Beneath the ice. Beneath Pluto's crust lies a mystery that may reshape how we see distant worlds. Evidence from New Horizons suggests that under its frozen shell, there could be a subsurface ocean, liquid water locked beneath kilometers of ice. At first, scientists thought Pluto must have formed cold, but the cracks and ridges on its surface tell a different story, one of expansion, not contraction, as if the planet once swelled from within, heated by the energy of its formation, or perhaps by radioactive decay deep below. If that's true, then Pluto may have been, and may still be, an ocean world, a place where liquid water persists in darkness, insulated from the void. If Pluto, so small and distant, can keep its heart warm, then how many others might there be? How many icy worlds scattered through the Kuiper Belt hold hidden seas, silent, ancient, waiting? Narrator. In that realization, something changes. Pluto stops being a cold, dead relic and becomes a symbol of possibility. For beneath that heart of nitrogen and ice, there might still be movement, perhaps even chemistry, perhaps even something more.
We've seen Pluto, its glaciers, its atmosphere, its hidden ocean. Now, New Horizons sails further still, toward a place more ancient than any world we've known, a fossil from the dawn of creation. Scene 1. Into the Deep. After its historic flyby of Pluto, New Horizons continued outward, deeper into the Kuiper Belt, where sunlight fades to almost nothing. Here, the solar wind weakens, and the stars begin to look sharper, colder, older. The spacecraft was still healthy, its instruments humming, its power steady, but it needed a new destination, a world yet unimagined. So scientists turned the Hubble Space Telescope toward the darkness, searching for anything along New Horizons' path. They found not one, but several faint specks, small, slow-moving objects orbiting far beyond Pluto.
One of them stood out, a tiny reddish body just 35 kilometers long. It would become Arrokoth, a name meaning sky in the Powhatan language, a fitting name for an object that predates everything we know of our sky. Scene 2. A target found. When Hubble discovered Arrokoth, New Horizons was already years beyond Pluto. The odds of finding something close enough to reach were astonishingly low, yet the trajectory lined up almost perfectly. Arrokoth was so distant, so dim, that even Hubble could barely see it. It appeared as a single pixel, a tiny flicker against the stars. Still, that was enough. In 2017, engineers sent commands to fire New Horizons thrusters, gently nudging its course by a few degrees, a maneuver that took weeks to complete. It was like threading a needle across billions of kilometers, but it worked. New Horizons was now on a direct path to the most distant object ever visited by a spacecraft. Scene 3. Approaching the unknown. 3 years later, in late 2018, New Horizons began its long approach. From 172 million kilometers away from the Sun, it started to photograph its target, a faint blinking point barely distinguishable from background stars. As the days passed, that point began to grow. By December, its shape became visible. It wasn't round, it wasn't even symmetrical. Arrokoth looked like two spheres fused together, a contact binary, two ancient bodies that had gently merged in the early days of the solar system. Scientists held their breath. No spacecraft had ever seen such a thing up close. Scene 4. The moment of encounter. On January 1st, 2019, at 12:33 a.m. Eastern Time, New Horizons swept past Arrokoth at 51,000 kilometers per hour. It came within just 3,500 kilometers, closer than it ever came to Pluto. From 6.6 billion kilometers away from the Sun, the faint light took nearly 6 hours to reach the spacecraft, and another 6 hours for its signal to return to Earth. Communication was painfully slow, only 1 kilobit per second, but it worked. Over the next 2 years, the data trickled back, image by image, byte by byte, revealing the face of a world untouched for over 4 billion years. Scene 5. The oldest landscape. When the final images arrived, the world gasped. Arrokoth looked like a snowman, 2 lobes pressed together, smooth, softly curved, tinted red. But the deeper story lay in what it meant. This was not just another asteroid. This was a time capsule, a remnant from the era when the solar system was still a swirling disk of gas and dust. Its smooth surface and lack of craters told us it had remained nearly unchanged since birth. The 2 lobes, now called Ultima and Thule, had once orbited each other slowly before touching and freezing in place. A cosmic embrace preserved for eternity. Here, at the farthest edge of the Sun's reach, lay a monument to the gentlest collision in cosmic history. Scene 6. The color of creation. Arrokoth's surface glows with a faint red hue, the color of ancient chemistry. Its redness comes from tholins, those same organic compounds found on Pluto and Charon, created when cosmic rays and ultraviolet light break apart methane and nitrogen ice. Spectra showed traces of methanol, water ice, and hydrogen cyanide. Simple molecules that, under the right conditions, can evolve into far more complex organics. This reddish skin is more than just dust. It's the residue of prebiotic chemistry, the kind that once gave rise to the ingredients of life itself. In a sense, Arrokoth is not only a fossil of the solar system, it's a memory of the chemistry that made us. Scene 7. The shape of stillness. The more scientists studied Arrokoth, the stranger it became. It wasn't spherical, or rugged, or shattered like the asteroids we know. Instead, it was flat, like two coins pressed together, spinning lazily in the dark. There were no violent fractures, no signs of chaos. This was not the result of destruction, but of calm creation. Two clouds of dust gently coming together at walking speed. In that quiet union, Arrokoth became a symbol of how planets may have first formed, not through catastrophe, but through patience, through gravity's tender pull. It's hard to imagine something so ancient, so fragile, surviving billions of years untouched. Yet there it floats, serene, unchanged, circling the sun in solitude. Scene 8. Heat in the cold. Even here, 6.5 billion kilometers away, Arrokoth isn't completely frozen. New Horizons detected it to be slightly warmer than models predicted, around 29 Kelvin instead of the expected 14 Kelvin. It's still unimaginably cold, but that small difference hints at something stirring within, perhaps slow decay of radioactive elements or trapped heat from its formation. Its density, just half that of water, suggests it's porous, more foam than rock, a relic built from loosely packed ice grains. Every aspect of Arrokoth defies expectation. Quiet where we expected chaos, preserved where we expected ruin. It is, quite literally, the gentlest relic in the cosmos. Scene 9. The Last Look. As New Horizons receded, it turned its camera one last time. Against the eternal black, Arrokoth appeared as a faint silhouette, its outline barely illuminated by the distant sun. That image, simple, grainy, faint, may be the last close-up view humanity ever sees of Arrokoth. No future mission is planned. No spacecraft will likely pass this way again for centuries. And so, New Horizons kept moving, carrying the memory of two worlds and the echoes of the sun's light farther and farther into the deep.
New Horizons had revealed Pluto's icy heart and Arrokoth's timeless stillness, two worlds untouched by human hands, connected only by curiosity and light. Now the spacecraft drifts onward, deeper into the dark, carrying with it the last images we may ever see of those distant worlds, and the quiet promise of more to come. Scene 1. The Fading Signal. By the time New Horizons left Arrokoth behind, its antennas were already whispering across nearly 7 billion kilometers of space. Each bit of data took 6 hours to reach Earth, a fragile thread of radio light traveling through cosmic silence. On the monitors at Mission Control, the final transmission flickered into life, a faint image of Arrokoth's outline, framed against a backdrop of infinite stars. That image marked not an ending, but a beginning. Humanity's first real step into the true outer solar system. The spacecraft kept flying, undaunted, toward regions no one had ever explored, beyond the known influence of the sun. Scene 2. The Search for More. Even after 2 historic encounters, New Horizons still has life left. Its nuclear heart, a radioisotope generator, hums with the slow decay of plutonium, giving it power enough to last well into the 2030s. It still carries 11 kilograms of fuel, just enough for gentle course adjustments. And so, the search continues. Astronomers now scour the sky with ever more sensitive telescopes, hunting for one last target, another small world drifting quietly in the Kuiper belt. If one can be found, and if the geometry aligns just right, New Horizons could attempt a third encounter, another brief touch of discovery before fading into the stars. But even if that never comes, the mission will not end. Because beyond the Kuiper belt lies the heliosphere, the great bubble of the sun's influence. And beyond that, the interstellar medium, the true sea between the stars. Scene 3. Beyond the sun's reach. One day, New Horizons will cross that invisible frontier, following the paths once taken by Voyager 1 and Voyager 2. It will drift through the outer heliosphere, measuring how the solar wind thins and fades, how cosmic rays whisper through the boundary of our home. In the 2030s, it will reach a place where the sun is no longer a star, but a bright point among countless others. There, surrounded by silence older than the Earth itself, it will still listen, still watch, still send home its faint, rhythmic pulse, like a heartbeat fading into infinity. Scene 4. The legacy of light. Every image, every pixel, every byte New Horizons has sent carries a story, a fragment of sunlight reflected across time. From Pluto's glacial plains and blue haze to Arrokoth's gentle embrace, these are not just pictures of distant worlds. They are mirrors showing us who we are when we dare to look beyond ourselves. For all our technology, our equations, our precision, it's emotion that drives these journeys. The same wonder that guided our ancestors when they first looked up and named the stars. New Horizons is, in truth, an extension of that same instinct, the need to reach, to understand, to see. Scene 5. The view from afar. As it continues its endless voyage, New Horizons occasionally turns its camera back toward home. From billions of kilometers away, Earth is a single pale spark, almost invisible, yet utterly unique. When it looked toward the nearest star system, Alpha Centauri, the spacecraft saw it shifted ever so slightly in position compared to Earth's view, a cosmic parallax caused by its unimaginable distance. That tiny displacement, that subtle difference, was the proof of how far we had come, how far we still could go. It's humbling to realize that even after traveling billions of kilometers, the stars themselves barely move. That space is so vast, our greatest leaps are still but steps. Yet what steps they are! Scene 6. The meaning of the journey. We often think of exploration as conquest, of reaching, claiming, planting flags. But out here, there's no one to conquer, no flag to raise, just silence and the understanding that we are small, but capable of greatness. When we first dreamed of touching the outer planets, we imagined cold, dead rocks. What we found instead were worlds of poetry and persistence, places where time moves differently, where even ice can flow, where stillness can sculpt. We discovered that beauty doesn't end where sunlight fades. It just changes form. Scene 7. The final image. Somewhere beyond Pluto, the spacecraft turns one last time toward the sun. The camera catches a faint glow, a pinprick of light surrounded by darkness. That tiny spark is everything, every ocean, every mountain, every laugh, every tear, every civilization that ever was or will be. In that moment, the distance becomes meaning, the silence becomes perspective, and the mission becomes something more than exploration. it becomes reflection. Because those final images are not just of Pluto and Arrokoth. They are, in a way, the final images of ourselves, seen from a distance great enough to reveal our unity. Scene 8. The Voyager of Tomorrow. New Horizons will continue to drift long after its instruments fall silent. It will pass the heliopause, then journey through the void between stars, a ghost ship of human curiosity. Perhaps millions of years from now, it will still be traveling, carrying a record of our questions, our wonder, and our courage to look outward. That someday story is one of those that bridges generations, even through the cosmic echoes of the past. Scene 9. The Human Story. What drives us to send our machines into the cold? What compels us to listen for whispers from worlds we may never touch? Maybe it's not about answers. Maybe it's about belonging. The realization that we are part of something vast, ancient, and ongoing. Pluto and Arrokoth remind us that even the smallest places have stories, that even in darkness, beauty thrives, and that the universe, indifferent though it may seem, still rewards curiosity with wonder. Scene 10. The Farewell. As we close this chapter of exploration, New Horizons sails on, past the frozen relics of the solar system's edge, into a realm where no light guides and no maps remain. It carries with it the last images we may ever see of Pluto and Arrokoth, images that speak not of endings, but of continuity. They remind us that every frontier reached opens another beyond it, that the horizon is not a limit, but a promise. One day, the signal will fade. The spacecraft will fall silent, and yet its journey will continue, a small monument of metal and memory, drifting between stars, carrying the heartbeat of a species that could not stop wondering.